author, inspiration to the world, God's gift to America from Israel. Avi Lipkin, how you doing, Avi?
Great to be with you as always, sir.
All right. Well, hey, you didn't flinch when I said God's gift to America from Israel because a lot of my friends would concur. And now, folks, there's a lot of things you see on the news. You can't trust one of them, but you can trust what we're doing right now. That's why it's so important to support GLC, glc.us.com, glc.tv, the last bastion of American freedom and speech. Not even other Christian networks will give it to you like we do in terms of the truth. And here we are right now with Avi Lipkin. Avi, tell us what's happening right now there on the ground in Israel.
Well, the latest breaking news is very interesting, and it just came out of the Israeli news a few minutes ago. It was an official announcement from the IDF spokesman. And if you remember yesterday, Israel targeted with accurate rockets, which were about 30 pounds each, accurate rockets which killed two Hamas, leading Hamas terrorists in Rafah. And something strange happened, and all of a sudden, 3 dozen Gaza Arabs who were not connected to the battle were killed in a tremendous fire, which took place. And of course, Israel was condemned without anybody checking the facts. And they announced just a few minutes ago that this was a classic case of Hamas burying tons of dynamite under the ground about 100 yards away from the encampment of tents where the Gaza evacuees were sent to. And the two rockets that Israel fired did not kill those people. What happened was when they hit the two terrorist leaders, it set off secondary explosions. And that whole missile base with missiles under the ground exploded, and then the fire spread to the encampment. It had nothing to do with killing innocent civilians. Hamas just plants dynamite everywhere, and wherever they set off a bomb, the whole thing just blows up and burns everything in its path. So, of course, Israel regrets the deaths of innocent civilians, but this was something that was set up by Hamas to do precisely that. I don't know if anybody in the world media is listening or paying attention, but of course Israel is a very convenient target for being blamed.
Well, Hamas knows all it has to do is just coordinate with their cronies in the media, the mainstream media. It's no secret for those who are willing to learn the truth that Hezbollah, Hamas, any other terrorist organization is renowned for putting weapon caches in schools, hospitals, and the lives of the average Palestinian means nothing to these terrorist organizations because the media lapdogs will, of course, use that. I used to say use that to blame Israel, but they're told to blame Israel. They have a good friends, and they're bought and paid for media outlets. And it's just part of the game. It is very sad, the collateral damage. Israel goes to great lengths to avoid collateral damage. And yet, if they succeed in not having a high body count among the innocents, well, you can count on the terrorist organizations who indoctrinated these terrorists as children to blow themselves up and blow others up. I'll never forget the first time I heard someone brave enough on mainstream media to say, stop calling them suicide bombers. They're homicide bombers. They can go out in the desert and kill themselves all day long if they want, but when they kill innocents around them, they're homicide bombers. There's never been a concern on behalf of these terrorist organizations or the PLO to kill civilians around them when they're making their points. And as a matter of fact, the Iranian government and someone even say the Saudis will pay martyrs for striking targets and killing innocents. So all of a sudden, innocent lives matter when you're a terrorist, if they're killed by Israel or allegedly killed by Israel. But otherwise, they're just a part of the game on the chessboard, right? And so, very sad that there's been a loss of life. Unfortunately, these tactics are nothing new. I've never forget seeing a meme where, an Israeli soldier is standing in front of a baby carriage firing, and the Hamas or the PLO or Hezbollah or whatever, they're standing behind the baby carriage firing. They know that they'll get more attention from their bought and paid for mainstream media. That's why we're doing what we're doing here today.
They had an interesting interview with one of our former chiefs of staff of the Israeli army. His name is AVI, and he retired about 2 years ago. And he was talking about a meeting he had with a 3-star general in the U.S. military, and was explaining about how Israel is so careful not to kill, innocent civilians, that what Israel does is they go in and instead of flattening the whole neighborhood, they go in and they go from house to house and they drill through the wall of one house into another house, the apartments. And that way they find the terrorists, they kill them, they find the dynamite, they find the guns, everything. But it's done surgically so as not to compromise innocent lives. And the American general just sat there silent, didn't say anything. And so the Israeli chief of staff says, well, so what do you think about it? He says, well, actually, in the U.S. military, we just flatten all the buildings in the area, so there's no problem to go surgically. Israel is the only country that is forced to go through this double standard and then still get blamed. So, by the way, I have to tell you, today in today's news, they said that the Philadelphia Road, which is the border between Egypt and Gaza, is about 14 kilometers long. 14 kilometers is about 10 miles. And to date, as of today, the Israeli military has taken over 80% of the Philadelphia Road. There are 50 attack tunnels under the border between Egypt and Gaza. Trucks can go through these tunnels. Gaza was supplied with all the weaponry it needed for the October 7th attack. And of course, everyone is saying to Israel, stop attacking in Rafah. But the moment we stop attacking in Rafah, we found today and yesterday hundreds of rockets. They've got the rockets. The rockets are smuggled in under the border from Egypt. And actually, I think Egypt should be held accountable for cooperating with this plan to destroy Israel through their proxy, Hamas. They're bringing in hand grenades and their RPGs and all kinds of weapons. Anything that can be brought in on the back of a truck is brought into Gaza. And we are finding all this inventory, which is being smuggled into Gaza from Egypt. So no way, Jose. There's no way we're going to stop in Gaza until all these, firstly, until the Philadelphia Road is successfully blocked off, and Egypt held responsible, for being part of the smuggling in of weapons of mass destruction into Gaza. Gaza was a strategic threat. Gaza now is no longer a strategic threat. Gaza now is a nuisance, and they're still firing rockets. But the Israeli military is purging the area of the rockets and the weapons and the terrorists. And I don't know, I think that Netanyahu is doing an excellent job. The military is doing an excellent job, even though there are some generals who are backstabbing. But that will be dealt with at the end of the war.
It seems that the same game is being played on university campuses in Israel. The latest, the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. You have protests. We will avenge. We will redeem Alaska. The Hebrew University sees those chants, and it's unthinkable that this is happening in Israel. Or is it? It's a far left organization. Surprise, leftism, the cancer to humanity and those who support it. And what do you have to say about that? How are the same volume of universities in Israel being bought and paid for with these paid demonstrations where the average protester doesn't even know what they're protesting? At what point
Well,
do we hold professors accountable?
firstly, I have to tell you, we have two types of people who protest on these campuses. One, of course, is the Arabs, who do not see themselves as Israelis, even though they enjoy all the fruits of the Israeli civilization,
Yeah.
colleges and jobs. Arabs are everywhere to be found. I had my pacemaker reviewed yesterday. Hadassah Hospital is full of Arab doctors and nurses. And I mean, these people, if they weren't allowed to work by the Jews, they'd be starving. And that may happen one day if they rise up and revolt against Israel. So we are very careful with the universities. There is also a group of ultra-left students. In every country, you have ultra-left students, and they're with the Arabs. But I have to emphasize, I have to reiterate that 70% of the people in Israel are Zionist, they're nationalist, they're conservative, they're religious. And the 30% that remain, 15% are Muslims and 15% are, or 20% are Muslims and 10% are left-wing Jews who despise God, despise the Bible, despise Israel, and they're ultra-left. You have them in America too, that they don't love God and they don't love America. They don't love anything that is holy.
Well, leftism is a cancer. It's tied to every
Yeah.
evil thing on the earth.
But the
And
Israeli right wing, because the Israeli right wing, which includes me, we all know who's the majority. The majority, 70%, is the right wing. There is no way that the left can take over. So no matter how much backstabbing they do, the next elections, which will be held in October 2006, the next elections, I have no doubt, will be a tremendous victory for the right wing. The left wing wants Israel, the socialists want Israel to withdraw from Gaza, which would mean defeat, anything that would embarrass Netanyahu and bring him down. And the Israeli right wing is very silent because we know that we're the majority. We know that we will not be thrown out of power by these left-wing anarchists. But it
there
is
is the,
these left-wing anarchists who are backed by Biden and the
of
globalists.
course, but Americans don't want to face that reality. Got to kill them babies, folks, right? The educational minister, Yoav Kish, and university management, they're being called upon to condemn these demonstrations. And where does, I could guess, where does he lean? How much is known about this education minister?
He's right wing. He's a great leader. But the problem is there's something that the left wing people say, well, we have freedom of speech in Israel. And the right wingers are fascists and they want to stop freedom of speech. Well, that's baloney. These people are terrorists who are demonstrating.
Well, it sounds all too familiar. You know, folks, you can Google the project and find out the Muslim Brotherhood's long-term plan to take over the White House. It's as old as the 80s. You know, bring them down, bring their miserable house down from the inside. Well, that's what you've been seeing here. You're also seeing that attempt in Israel, but I just have a feeling that Israel is just not going to let that happen. Seems to be smarter people in Israel than there are in America right now in terms of leadership. And again, at some point, it's got to come to a head. You know, money can buy these leftist leaders and expel the right wing. I mean, it's interesting. Do you ever think you'd be called right wing for loving your family and your country and your gender? It sounds like humanity to me. And but leftism, of course, has embraced everything vile, a scorched earth philosophy. And you know that better than anyone. You're a Sovietologist. You see the same measures being played out. So where are we on the clock? Are we at midnight? Are we 11 o'clock, 10 p.m.? Where are we in regards to Israel? Where do you think Israel is?
Well, I'm going to say something that I've said on your program many times, and that is on October 7th, when the terrorists attacked from Gaza, 3,000 terrorists came across the border and raped and killed and burned people to death and chopped up their bodies and took, the bodies to Gaza. These people, complete non-human beings.
Right.
These They saved us. What do I mean they saved us? Israel was on the verge of a civil war by October 7th. I spoke about this on your show, that the left wing was going to carry out a coup d'etat led by Ehud Barak against Netanyahu and against the right wing. And there are people, I'm going to say names that doesn't mean anything to you, but these people are calling for civil war between the right wing and the left. Now, the difference between the right wing and the left is the left wing says we want blood in the streets and we want bodies in the Yarkon River. The right wing people, to whom I belong, we say we don't raise our hand up against fellow Jews, whatever their ideas are. And so God Almighty in heaven gave us this war on October 7th is kind of a slap in the face to all the Jews, because these terrorists who came across from Gaza killed leftist Jews. They went into the kibbutzim and they killed left-wing socialist Jews, saying you're all settlers. And so those people who were elucidating about a special relationship with Gaza Arabs were proven to be totally stupid. Now what's happening is they're totally stupid again, preparing for a civil war, and that's when the war with Hezbollah and Lebanon will take place. And this war will take a full year. God Almighty in heaven is not allowing the Jews to kill each other with a civil war. So God throws other wars at us. And I think there are very few people who can disagree with me. But I'll tell you something else also. Remember on April the 14th, when we had this fusillade of missiles coming in from Iran. We have never had a problem with Iran historically. And they're shooting missiles at us. I mean, they want to destroy us. And I'm going to reveal a military secret. One of the reasons we don't attack Iran is because we are working to develop and perfect the Nautilus. I don't know if you heard of the Nautilus. It is a laser-based system up in the air, in the planes, that can send a zap and destroy the missiles from Iran in midair. Because what we have on the ground, if the Iranians launched 20 or 30 missiles at a single target, like our electrical facilities, there's no electricity, because you can stop 5, 10 of the missiles. You can't stop 30 missiles. But if you have the Nautilus, you can launch an electronic beam. Every few seconds, you destroy another one up in the stratosphere. And so this is the reason why I'm giving you a military secret now. This is the reason we are not attacking Hezbollah. We are not ready yet for the onslaught of Iranian missiles. When we are ready, then we will have the war with Iran as well. A lot of things are going to happen. A lot of things are going to come down. But I will tell you that the U.S. military already has these weapons. And Israel is working with the U.S. military to have all the weaponry needed in the event of a Chinese or Russian attack on the American mainland. Nobody's paying attention to the fact that Israel is the canary in the miner's canary in the mine, and America needs Israel to perfect these weapons so that America can use them if it needs to use them in the case of a world war. We are close to world war. Nobody talks about it. So we have to, really stop fooling around. And this business of civil war, I believe God is in control. God is not going to let a civil war take place in Israel.
I pray not. I'm throughout this conversation, I'm reminded of a presidential candidate from years past, Ross Perot. If you remember Ross Perot, yeah, here's the deal. Remember Ross Perot? His proposed solution was, anytime there's terror in the world, we bomb one of your holy sites. And that seemed pretty radical. But had he become the president, I think he would have done it. I have to
tell you, and it's in the second edition of my 4th book about the Bible Bloc Party. I quote the Islamic sources in Saudi Arabia who say, if we nuke Jerusalem, Allah is the greater God. If the Jews nuke Mecca and the Black Stone, the God of Israel is the true God. So we are at an Elijah the prophet moment in the history of the world. So we need to not forget these things.
You know, some believe that the reason that Elijah wanted water poured over the sacrifice is because the prophets of Baal would have a pre-lit coal under the altar, and all the whipping up would ignite the other coals and Baal would appear. But Elijah would rather face death than to serve a false god or to be a false prophet. I wonder what would happen if the prophets in America followed the same pattern. I know a few true, but I tell you, that strange fire is always consistent with those who want to kill the Jews.
Right.
And I still believe, no matter what you say, my friend, I still believe that Israel has the ability to wipe out all of their enemies in one day. I still believe that. And if not for any other reason than the God of Israel, but I still believe that
All in
Israel
God's hands.
already. Now, it's important, folks, that you understand that you have a knowledge of the truth. You're responsible for what you know. Hadash, Hadash. That's the left wing, of course, left. The cancer.
It's Hadash is the Communist Party.
Yeah, the left wing political party in Israel that advocates for the socialist and Arab Jewish cooperation. No, they really don't want Arab Jewish cooperation. They want Arab socialist cooperation, because true Jews serve a different God than they do. And so,
and the Jews have to die. Even the socialist Jews have to die.
Well, you know,
the Jews are the useful idiots of the Muslims.
Yes, and all you have to do is educate yourself in communism, right, or see how Lenin used the useful idiots, the same people that were championing the cause. You know, it's like seeing the rainbow flags. You know, LGBT for Islam. Well, I tell you, you're the first thrown off the bridges and thrown off the buildings and beheaded because of that. And you are the useful idiots. If you don't do your homework, they can't go against their mandates and belief system. And so, you know, again, money talks. You know, it dawned on me the other day, though, who holds these professors accountable? Because these young people aren't coming up with this idiocy on their own. It's being propagated in the universities. And the same dilemma here in America. You send your child to a Marxist center, you know, and you're shocked when they come back as a Marxist, you know, that they take money from the government, millions, and they take millions from you. But how many times do we have to see history repeat itself where children are turned against their parents? You know, it's the old playbook, the communist socialist playbook. And unfortunately, among the Arabs, you know, there's common ground, the same objectives. It almost seems like the communists want the Arabs to do their dirty work.
You know, I have to tell you something. You know, in Poland, in World War II, that was the biggest killing field of the Jewish people by the Nazis. And there were some Polish who were with the Nazis. Some Polish, not, I don't know, many, not many. But there were 7,000 righteous Gentiles who hid Jews in their homes, protected them, and also worked with the Catholic Church to defend the Jews at that time.
Interesting.
Yeah. In Gaza, there wasn't one righteous Gentile who told the Israeli intelligence where the kidnapped people were, you know, where the bodies were. All of this was hidden. And all the Gaza Arabs were totally in agreement with the annihilation of the Jews. And the Arabs in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, they all agree with Gaza. They all support the attack of Gaza, of Hamas on the Jews on October 7th. And they're going to do it to us. We are told in the media today in Israel, every community is a target for an October 7th type attack. What do you say about that?
Well, here's what I say. People thought it was harsh when Nehemiah sent away those who were not a part of the covenant. But was Nehemiah simply just being wise? It's an interesting time. Do you think that most Israelis have learned from that lesson that you may be peaceful and nice and sweet today, but when the call comes, are your enemies tomorrow?
You remember what I said to you about the universities in America were taken over by the Frankfurt School and the Leipzig School, which was
Right.
communist in the 1920s and 30s.
Right.
Here in Israel also, the professors came from Russia, Poland. They were socialists, communists in the 1920s and 30s. And that is what has been controlling all the universities in Israel since. So it's not a wonder that the young kids in the Israeli colleges and in American colleges have become communist, have become left-wing, anti-patriotic.
Well, you know, a leftist in Israel, a leftist in Germany, a leftist in America, they're all the same.
Correct?
Death and destruction, they are the cancer to humanity. And those who
and hatred of God. Hatred of God.
Right. Not a coincidence, folks. Not a coincidence. But you know what? I've given up on the leftist. With the information available to us today, you either have to be as dumb as a rock or you have to just be evil to support those policies that is the death and the destruction of the sovereignty of any nation, of the sanctity of life, the sanctity, the sacredness of family and faith. And we are coming to another world war. And it's not just going to be our artillery and tanks and information, but of a faith war, a holy war. You know, the Muslims want one so that their Mahdi can appear. And they want to create the conditions for their Mahdi to appear. They've been trying to create those conditions, you know, for thousands of years. And so here we are. Here we are. You know, the roots of that seed of Haman, I should say, or probably just say seed of Cain, you know, who was a murderer from the beginning. But that's what we're facing. There's no more excuse to walk in ignorance. We have to come together and stand together. Have you noticed that birds of a feather flock together? You can't separate one from the other. I've had people say, well, I'm a leftist, but those extremists don't represent us. Yeah, they do. They're the ones that are driving your bus. And the pretenders on the right, who seem to be impotent and powerless to take action. They must take action. So let's come together and pray for the peace of Jerusalem, pray for Israel. Thank you so much, Avi, for joining us today. And we can't wait till next time. We're glad that you're well. And as goes Israel, so goes the world. God save America.